Welcome to the Deep Dive. We dig into complex topics, pull out the key info from the sources, and we'll basically get you up to speed fast.
Yep. And today we're looking at something fundamental, how governments step into markets and change things up.
Often in ways you wouldn't expect.
Exactly. We're starting with a really stark picture from New York City back in 2019. You've got Stephanie Kernan, a landlord in the Bronx, staring down a $29,000 roof repair bill. Huge amount.
Wow.
And she has no idea how she's going to pay for it. Then, maybe just down the street, there's Glorabel Castillo, a tenant, and she's just relieved.
And the reason for this difference?
Rent control. Specifically, newly tightened rent control laws.
It's a powerful contrast, isn't it? So Glorabel, who cleans hotel rooms, works 2 shifts. Yeah. She suddenly feels secure. Her rent isn't going to shoot up.
Which is huge for someone working class in an area that's gentrifying fast.
Absolutely. But for Stephanie, the landlord, those exact same laws make fixing a leaky roof, forget the mortgage, almost impossible. It's just a snapshot, really, of how these interventions hit different people differently right away.
It really highlights how policies, often designed with good intentions, protect tenants, for example, can create these really significant, maybe unintended challenges for others. It's the government sort of meddling, as economists sometimes put it, with the market's natural flow.
Right. So that's our deep dive today. We want to understand why governments do this, what tools they use, things like price controls, quantity controls, and crucially, what happens next.
Yeah, what are the consequences when you disrupt supply and demand? They're often predictable, sometimes a bit counterintuitive. Who wins, who loses?
And what does it mean for society? And let's be honest, what might you need to know for your next econ exam?
We'll be looking closely at price ceilings, like that rent control example. Then price floors, think minimum wage. And also quantity controls, like those famous New York City taxi medallions.
We'll show how these things can lead to inefficiencies and how they almost always spark black markets.
Okay, so let's back up a bit. We know from, basic economics that markets tend to move towards an equilibrium.
That sweet spot, right, where the amount buyers want is exactly what sellers offer. Supply equals demand.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The price that achieves that balance, it doesn't always make everyone happy. Not by a long shot.
That's the key tension. Buyers, naturally, always want lower prices. Think affordable housing. There's a huge push to make sure people can afford rent, even if the market rate is really high.
And on the flip side, sellers want higher prices. The classic example is wages. If the market wage leaves workers in poverty, there's a strong moral and political case for a minimum wage, a price floor.
But you get political pressure, arguments about fairness, and pretty often the government decides to step in.
And when they regulate the prices, we call those price controls. A price ceiling is a maximum legal price, like rent control.
Can't go higher than this.
Right. And a price floor is a minimum legal price, like the minimum wage.
Can't go lower.
Exactly. And then there's a different approach. Quantity controls, or quotas. That's an upper limit on how much of something can actually be bought or sold.
Okay. So it's easy to think, great, government steps in, problem solved.
Yeah.
But it's rarely that simple, is it?
Not usually. Messing with the market's price signals often leads to, well, a whole bunch of predictable and sometimes quite negative side effects.
Now, that's generally when the market was working pretty well to begin with.
That's a key point. There are exceptions. If a market is already inefficient, say you have a monopoly, price controls might actually help.
Or in really short-term crises.
Yes, exactly, like a natural disaster or a pandemic. Think about ventilators during early COVID. Temporary price controls, or just allocating them directly, might be necessary to ensure fair distribution, stop prices going sky high.
Okay, got it. Let's dive into price ceilings then. Rent control is the big one here.
Right, so a price ceiling is an upper limit. They often pop up during crises, wars, disasters to stop price gouging.
We saw it in World War II, right?
Yeah.
On raw materials.
Yep. And the 1973 oil crisis led to controls. Even after Hurricane Sandy in 2012, New York and New Jersey put temporary ceilings on gas prices. People remember those long lines.
And the New York City rent control we started with.
That's actually a relic of World War II. It's kind of amazing it stuck around so long, mostly for political reasons, while other cities got rid of theirs. It's why you still hear these wild stories about apartments in Manhattan renting for pennies on the dollar compared to market rates.
So how does it work, mechanically? Let's model it. Imagine a simple market for apartments. No controls. There's an equilibrium rent, maybe $1,000 a month.
And at that price, say 2 million apartments are rented out. Supply meets demand. Everyone who wants one at that price finds one. Every landlord who wants to rent at that price finds a tenant. Balance.
Okay, now the government steps in. Price ceiling, $800. That's below the $1,000 equilibrium. What happens?
Well, two things. Landlords think, $800, less incentive. Maybe they don't maintain units, maybe they convert them to condos, maybe some just sit empty. So the quantity supplied falls, let's say to 1.8 million apartments.
But for renters, $800 sounds great.
Absolutely. More people want apartments now. Quantity demanded rises, maybe to 2.2 million.
So supply down, demand up.
You get a gap, a persistent shortage. In this case, 400,000 apartments short. People want them, but they just aren't available at that controlled price. It's a direct result of pushing the price below equilibrium.
And critically, this only happens if the ceiling is below the equilibrium, if they set it at $1,200.
Nothing happens. The market price is already $1,000, which is below $1,200. It's what we call a non-binding ceiling. It's irrelevant.
Okay, so this shortage isn't just annoying, it creates real economic problems.
Yeah.
Inefficiencies.
Big time. It stops deals that should happen, deals that would make both sides better off. Price ceilings cause inefficiency in at least 4 ways.
Okay, number one.
Inefficiently low quantity. Because the price is artificially low, fewer apartments get rented overall, 1.8 million instead of 2 million in our example. This gap represents lost transactions.
And that leads to?
Deadweight loss. That's the term economists use. It's the value lost to society. Because those mutually beneficial trades, someone willing to rent, someone willing to pay, don't happen. It's not just a transfer, it's wealth that just vanishes.
Okay, inefficiency number two.
Inefficient allocation to consumers. This means the apartments that are available don't necessarily go to the people who value them most.
Like your example earlier. The Lee's family, desperate, willing to pay $1,500, can't find anything.
Right. But George, the retiree, has a place for $800. He doesn't even value that highly. Maybe he'd give it up for just $850. The Lees would gladly pay him more than that to take it over, but under rent control, that transfer often can't happen legally. It's a huge misallocation.
Number three.
Wasted resources. People burn time, money, and effort dealing with the shortage. Think about those gas lines in '79. Hours wasted. That's opportunity cost time not spent working or with family.
Or the Lees spending months searching, pounding the pavement, making calls.
All that effort is a waste from society's perspective. It doesn't produce anything new. It's just coping with the shortage created by the control.
And the fourth, inefficiency.
Inefficiently low quality. Why should a landlord spend money fixing up a rent-controlled apartment? They can't raise the rent to cover the cost, and there's always a line of people waiting for the unit anyway.
So things get run down.
Exactly. Rent-controlled buildings are often, frankly, notoriously badly maintained. It creates a perverse incentive not to invest. You even get those bizarre rent-control millionaire stories from places like Mumbai or New York.
Where people in amazing locations pay almost nothing.
And eventually get paid a fortune just to leave because the apartment itself is so valuable in the open market, but the rent is stuck artificially low. It shows how disconnected the controlled price can become.
And all of this fuels
Black markets, yep. Illegal payments, maybe key money slipped to landlord, tenants subletting illegally for higher prices. These markets pop up to try and get around the controls.
Sometimes they might actually reduce the inefficiency a bit, letting apartments change hands.
True, but they undermine the law and create unfairness in other ways.
So if these ceilings cause shortages, inefficiency, low-quality black markets, why do we still have them, like in New York?
Well, a couple reasons. First, the people who do benefit those tenants, lucky enough to have a rent-controlled apartment, benefit a lot, and they tend to be organized and vocal.
They fight to keep it.
Makes sense. Also, if control has been in place for decades, people might genuinely not know what a free market would look like. They might see high black market rents and think that's the alternative, rather than a potentially lower stable equilibrium price.
And maybe policymakers just don't fully buy the supply and demand model.
That happens too. Or they prioritize the perceived fairness for current tenants over the broader economic inefficiencies.
The Venezuela example is pretty chilling, though.
It really is. An oil-rich country facing massive shortages of, everything. Food, medicine, toilet paper, because of widespread price controls under Chavez.
Prices set so low
that producers just stopped producing. Farmers cut back, imports dried up eventually. You had empty shelves, people waiting in line for hours for basics. It ended up hurting the poor, the very people it was supposed to help the most. Malnutrition, mass emigration. It's a stark lesson.
Okay, a powerful case study. Let's switch gears. Let's talk price floors.
Right, the opposite of ceilings. Instead of a maximum price, this is a minimum price.
Often used to boost income for sellers, right? Like farmers
Or
or...
workers.
Hmm.
The most common price floor you probably interact with or hear about is the minimum wage. It's a legal floor for the price of labor.
Okay, let's model this one too. Maybe with butter this time.
Sure, let's say the free market equilibrium for butter is $1 per pound, and at that price, 10 million pounds are bought and sold. Nice balance.
Now, a government wants to help dairy farmers. They impose a price floor of $1.28 per pound, higher than the market price.
Okay, so at $1.20, farmers think, great, let's make more butter. Quantity supplied goes up maybe to 12 million pounds.
But consumers, they see $1.20 and think,
That's a bit pricey. So quantity demanded goes down, maybe to only 9 million pounds.
so now we have supply up, demand down, the opposite of a shortage.
Exactly. We get a persistent surplus. In this case, 3 million pounds of butter that nobody wants to buy at that price floor.
And what happens to all that extra butter?
Well, often the government has to buy it up. That leads to stories of governments warehousing tons of cheese or milk or butter. Sometimes it's given away, sometimes destroyed. It's a direct consequence of the floor.
And for the minimum wage, that surplus isn't butter.
It's labor. The surplus is unemployment. More people wanting to work at the minimum wage than there are jobs available at that wage.
And again, this only bites if the floor is above the equilibrium wage. If the minimum wage is set below what the market would pay anyway.
It's non-binding, no effect.
Okay, so price floors cause surpluses. Do they also cause inefficiencies like ceilings do?
They do, and in very similar ways. First, and this trips students up sometimes, both floors and ceilings reduce the actual quantity bought and sold.
Wait, how can a floor reduce quantity? Doesn't it encourage supply?
It encourages supply, yes, but it discourages demand. And the actual number of transactions is limited by whichever side is smaller. With a floor, demand is the short side. So the quantity of butter actually sold falls from 10 million to 9 million pounds in our example.
Ah, okay, so
Yeah.
you still get fewer transactions overall.
Right, and fewer transactions means.
Deadweight loss again.
Yeah,
Lost value to society.
yep. Second, inefficiency. Inefficient allocation of sales among sellers. This means the sales don't necessarily go to the producers who could supply the good at the lowest cost.
How does that work?
Think about the minimum wage in some European countries where it's quite high. You might have experienced workers keeping their jobs, but employers are reluctant to hire less experienced, potentially less productive young people at that same high wage, even if those young people would be willing to work for less to get started.
Yeah.
It can create this two-tier labor market.
Got it. Third,
Wasted resources. Just like people wasting time looking for rent-controlled apartments, governments waste resources buying and storing surplus butter. Or unemployed workers waste time fruitlessly searching for jobs that aren't there because of the minimum wage.
and number 4, this one's interesting. Inefficiently high quality.
Yeah, the opposite of the low quality from price ceilings. If the price is fixed high by a floor, sellers can't compete by lowering the price. So how do they compete?
On quality.
Exactly. They might offer excessively high quality that consumers don't actually value enough to pay for. The classic example is transatlantic flights before airline deregulation. Prices were kept high by regulation.
So airlines threw in fancy meals and services.
Right. Lavish stuff people didn't necessarily want if it meant paying those high fares. After deregulation, fares dropped, service quality dropped on average, but way more people started flying because it was affordable. Consumers preferred the lower price, lower quality option.
And finally, price floors can also lead to
Illegal activity, like black labor people agreeing to work off the books for less than the minimum wage, maybe involving bribes or simply unreported cash payments.
So, similar reasons for persistence as price ceilings. Benefiting influential sellers, maybe misunderstanding the model.
Pretty much. Farmers groups, sometimes unions, lobby effectively for floors, and policymakers might believe the simple supply-demand model doesn't capture the complexities of, say, the labor market.
The unpaid intern example is fascinating here, how a floor suddenly became binding.
Totally. For years, unpaid internships were just accepted. Then, around 2011, lawsuits started popping up. Interns argued they were doing real work, not just learning, and should be paid minimum wage.
And they won.
Many cases were settled for millions. By 2018, the Department of Labor basically said, either pay your interns minimum wage or prove the internship is genuinely educational, like tied to course credit. The price floor for labor suddenly applied where it hadn't before.
Okay, we've covered ceilings and floors. What about the third type? quantity controls or quotas.
Right. So instead of controlling price, the government limits the quantity of a good or service that can be bought or sold.
And the most famous example is,
Got to be the New York City taxi medallions. Back in the 1930s, NYC started requiring licenses medallions to operate a taxi. Initially, maybe for quality control.
but the number issued was strictly limited.
Extremely limited, only about 11,787 initially, and even by 2019 it was still under 14,000 despite the city growing massively. This scarcity made the medallions incredibly valuable.
So how does a quota work economically? Let's visualize the taxi market again.
Okay. No quota. Equilibrium fare is, say, $5, and 10 million rides happen per year. Now, the city imposes a quota. Only 8 million rides allowed per year. A vertical line on our graph at 8 million.
What does that do to price?
Well, at that lower quantity of 8 million rides, consumers are willing to pay more. Looking at the demand curve, maybe they're willing to pay $6 per ride.
What about the drivers, the
Yeah.
suppliers?
To get drivers to supply exactly 8 million rides, you only need to offer them maybe $4 per ride. That's the price on the supply curve at that quantity.
Hold on. Riders pay $6, but drivers only need $4 to be willing to provide the service. Where does the extra $2 go?
That $2 difference is the quota rent. It's the economic rent, the extra earning that goes to whoever holds the license, the medallion. It's the value created purely by the artificial scarcity imposed by the quota.
So the medallion itself earns that $2 per ride.
Effectively, yes. Even if you own the medallion and drive your own cab, that $2 is your opportunity cost. It's
Yeah.
what you could have earned by renting the medallion out to someone else. That quota rent is why medallions were selling for like $500,000 or more in 2010.
Wow. And like the others, a quota only works if it's set below the equilibrium quantity, right?
Exactly. If the quota was 12 million rides, but equilibrium was 10 million, it would be non-binding.
What are the costs here? Seems similar.
Very similar. First, deadweight loss. Those 2 million rides between the quota, 8 meters, and equilibrium, 10 meters.
Right.
They don't happen. Mutually beneficial transactions are blocked. Value is lost.
Inefficiency again?
Yep. And quotas also create incentives for illegal activity, unlicensed gypsy cabs operating outside the system.
But then came the big disruption. Uber and Lyft.
Right. This is a fantastic real-world example. They essentially found a legal loophole around the medallion system. You weren't hailing them on the street, you were prearranging a ride via an app.
And suddenly, thousands more cars flooded the streets.
Tens of thousands. By 2018, Uber alone had way more cards than there were medallion taxes. It effectively blew the quota wide open. The quantity of rides available shot up, moving much closer to where the free market equilibrium might have been.
And the effect on the medallion value.
It cratered from over $500,000 down to like $130,000, $185,000 by 2018, 2019. The quota rent basically evaporated as the quantity limit became less binding. It shows market forces finding a way around the regulation.
But quotas aren't always bad, are they? What about that Alaska crab example?
That's a great counterpoint. Shows how design matters. Crab fishing was dangerously overfished. In '83, they put in a total quota, a limit on the total catch.
But that caused problems too.
Big problems. It led to these insane fishing derbies, everyone racing out in dangerous conditions to catch as much as they could before the total quota was hit. Fatality rates were astronomical, like 80 times the average worker.
So what changed?
In 2006, they switched to individual transferable quotas, ITQs. Each boat got a specific share of the total catch limit. They could fish it over a longer, safer season, and crucially, they could buy or sell their quota shares.
So if you had a smaller boat, you could sell your quota to someone with a bigger, safer boat.
Exactly. It led to consolidation onto safer vessels, reduced the frantic race, allowed crab populations to recover, stabilized prices, and actually increased fishermen's earnings. It's an example of a well-designed quota system achieving environmental and economic goals.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what are the big takeaways from this deep dive?
I think the main thing is that government interventions, price ceilings, price floors, quantity quotas, they often start with good intentions, trying to fix a perceived problem or unfairness.
But they almost always have these predictable, often unwanted side effects.
Right. Shortages from ceilings, surpluses from floors, inefficiency across the board. Deadweight loss, misallocation, wasted resources, distorted quality, and they pretty much always encourage black markets.
So society often loses overall value, even if some specific groups benefit.
Precisely. And while there might be cases where controls are justified fixing existing market failures, short-term crises, or well-designed quotas like the crab example, they often stick around because the beneficiaries are influential, or maybe because the full economic consequences aren't well understood.
So for everyone listening, especially if you're studying economics, thinking about these mechanisms is key.
Definitely. It gives you a framework.
So here's a thought to leave you with. Next time you hear about a new policy proposal, maybe something designed to fix a market problem, whether it's housing, wages, or something else, ask yourself,
Yeah.
based on what we've talked about, what are the unintended consequences you might expect to see?
Understanding these principles really helps you analyze policies critically, beyond the headlines, and see the hidden trade-offs.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We hope this tour through price and quantity controls helps you ace those econ courses.